I was watching Adolescent a couple of weeks back. That beautiful, brutal show that doesn't just reflect masculinity, but drags it into the light, bleeding and bruised. Not to give too much away about the story, but it follows a character named Jamie Miller, a 13-year-old boy. And I won't say too much, but he's not a villain entirely, but a mirror. A product of a world that taught him being a man meant bottling it all up until it broke out sideways. We get to watch this insight into the current state of boys in the 21st century, spending hours online locked in their rooms trying to find community, a place to belong, only to be snatched up by the manosphere's cold, cruel gospel. And somewhere along the line, while you're watching, it hits you. This isn't just about one boy. It's about all boys. All the boys we failed as a society. The ones taught to clench their fists instead of opening their mouths. The ones never handed the tools to be whole. Adolescent doesn't give us easy answers. It gives us something harder. The truth. That masculinity, as we've built it, isn't raising men. It's starving them.
It's Wednesdays.
Hello, 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 gays, gals, theys, straights, and everyone in between. And for this episode specifically, every emotionally repressed man still trying to decode his group chat. Welcome back to yet another episode of Wednesdays with Woody, where we're interrupting your basic, hectic Wednesday to bring you deep feelings, soft truths, and a healthy dose of socially conscious chaos. I've titled today's episode Boy Problems, and not the kind Carly Rae was singing about. We're talking about modern masculinity, what it means today, who it's hurting, and what happens when manhood becomes a mask too heavy to hold. So to start us off with such a hectic topic, I thought that we'd begin with some stats. Only 27% of men say they have 6 close friends. That number was 55% in 1995. In 30 years, we've halved our emotional support systems, and we feel it. 16% of adults say they feel lonely or isolated most of the time. The number shoots up if you're under 50. And if you're a man, you've likely been told that feelings are for girls, tears are weakness, and bro talk counts as vulnerability. But let's be real. Replying safe bro to a breakup text doesn't count as emotional support. Male friendships often lack depth because masculinity has long demanded independence over intimacy. Loneliness doesn't always look like silence or isolation. Sometimes it's loud, hidden in overwork, in numbing routines, in chasing validation because connection feels too vulnerable to pursue. It's being surrounded by people, but still feeling unknown. In shape-shifting in social spaces because authenticity feels too risky. But we can't talk about loneliness without talking about what fuels it. Toxic masculinity. So what is toxic masculinity? Well, toxic masculinity refers to the rigid expectations, behaviors, and beliefs tied to traditional male gender roles. It's the doctrine that says, don't feel, don't fail, and definitely don't ask for help. It glorifies dominance, aggression, emotional suppression, and homophobia while rejecting vulnerability and emotional honesty. It teaches men that their value comes from control and toughness, not from tenderness or connection. It discourages them from forming deep bonds, from crying, from saying I love you, unless it's undercut with a joke. And the impacts, well, they're widespread. For gay men, toxic masculinity often shows up in mask for mask culture, femphobia, fatphobia, and the obsession with straight passing validation. It fragments us. reduces us to roles such as tops, bottoms, twinks, jocks, and creates a hierarchy of desire rooted in how well we mimic straight, cis male power. For women, it manifests in violence, emotional neglect, being silenced or overpowered, and for straight men, it leads to isolation, burnout, anger, with no outlet, and friendships that really go beyond surface level check-ins. So when people ask what toxic masculinity is, this is it. Not manhood itself, but the version of manhood that restricts, represses, and ruins connection. And until we rewrite that script, loneliness will keep echoing through our lives, no matter how many people swipe right. Many of us were never taught how to feel out loud, especially if you were raised in a home where crying was met with man up. Masculinity, as sold to us, is a survival suit. Tough exterior, no leaks, no weakness. But wearing it too long, it hardens you. It disconnects you. We become performers instead of participants in our own inner worlds. What's wild is that men do feel, but many are only allowed to express anger, not grief, not confusion, not affection. If you think about it, when was the last time you saw a man tell his friend, "I love you," without a punchline attached? The emotional literacy gap starts young. Little boys are told to stop crying, to toughen up, and those boys grow into men who don't know how to talk about the thing that's actually hurting them, so they bottle it up, and eventually the bottle explodes. We end up with men who self-isolate, who feel something but don't know what to call it, and instead of reaching out, they pull away. That's how emotional starvation spreads, not because men are heartless, but because they've been trained to see vulnerability as dangerous. I'd like to talk about queer masculinity just for a second. Being a gay man in 2025 means navigating two worlds. One that wants you to man up, and one that wants you to be marketable. You're either not man enough or too much of a brand. And quite frankly, all of it is just exhausting. There's still so much shame around softness, even within the queer community. Mask for mask culture? It's not just a grinder bio, it's a symptom of people internalizing that being emotional, feminine, expressive, or gentle is somehow less than. Even gay men sometimes distance themselves from femininity to feel accepted. We're celebrated when we're witty, sexy, and styled. But try crying in a club bathroom or showing up with your whole heart, and people get weird. The stats don't lie. Gay and bisexual men are at a higher risk of depression and anxiety, and the more gender non-conforming you are, the more it hurts. It isn't drama, it's just stats. So let's be loud about this. Soft queer boys are not weak. Tenderness isn't failure. Expressiveness is not excess. And it's time we stop apologizing for feeling things deeply. So what would it look like if we rebuild masculinity from the ground up? To me, real strength is not pretending you're okay. It's having the guts to say you're not. It's being the friend who checks in, the guy who cries without shame, the man who holds space, even if no one ever held it for him. And that doesn't mean rejecting all masculinity. It means expanding it, making room for multiple versions of what it means to be a man. There's room for the emotional dad, the affectionate bro, the quiet thinker, the soft caretaker. There's room for glitter and rage, for sports and poetry. Masculinity doesn't have to be the opposite of vulnerability. It can include it. Let's normalize affection between men. Let's normalize friendships that go deeper than "you good." Let's normalize therapy, softness, reflection. Let's normalize saying "I miss you," or "that hurt me," or "I don't have it all figured out." We cannot keep telling boys to shut down, then wonder why they struggle to open up as adults. This isn't just about feelings, it's about survival. Real friendship is a form of emotional CPR. We need spaces where men can cry without being called weak, where I love you isn't coded, where softness is sacred, where queer men can gather not just to flirt, but to build, to heal, to be held. And I suppose the same goes for straight men, but obviously they're not flirting with each other. But all of this requires intentionality. Maybe it means making the first move, sending the thinking of you text, starting a group chat that's not just about memes, asking a friend if they want to talk and listening without trying to fix them, or simply starting a group chat that isn't just silence for weeks on end. I once listened to a podcast told from the perspective of a wife about her husband attending a men's circle, a group of men gathering regularly just to speak things they couldn't share or say to their partners. Insecurities, shame, sex, fear, and failure. And I thought, this is what brotherhood looks like when it's rooted in honesty and not performance. I think every man needs a board, a group, a mirror, not just to reflect what he's achieving, but who he's becoming. Because we don't have it all figured out. And walking through life alone, that's not brave, that's just a trap. And maybe these circles, these spaces of refuge, don't need to be divided. Because here's the thing, gay men carry the same fears. Fear of not being enough, of not being strong enough, not man enough, successful enough. Fear that our desire for tenderness makes us too soft to survive. We've been performing masculinity, dodging vulnerability, chasing validation, just as much as our straight counterparts, just in different costumes. So what if the next version of these men's circles wasn't about separation but expansion? A place where gay and straight men could sit shoulder to shoulder and realize they're not all that different and that they're all struggling with the same kind of reality. Where we drop the comparisons and peacocking, the coded language, and speak the same human truth. We need sacred spaces where softness isn't just allowed, it's accepted. Where grief isn't awkward but honored, where being seen doesn't feel like exposure but belonging. For me, it's sitting across from a friend who didn't know how to cry until the moment the words, "I'm so tired," left his mouth. That moment changed our friendship. It changed him. And honestly, it changed me too. Connection isn't magic, it's built brick by soft, uncomfortable, beautiful brick. Because loneliness isn't a man's destiny. But without vulnerability and community, it becomes his reality. Maybe the problem wasn't being a boy. Maybe it was the rule book, the code, the silence, the script that told us strength meant suffering in silence, that vulnerability was dangerous, and that connection had to be earned through toughness. While watching Adolescence, I kept thinking, we didn't just fail Jamie, we failed every boy who was told that emotions were a liability. Every boy who turned to the internet for answers and got algorithms soaked in rage instead of empathy. Every boy who grew up into a man, still trying to untangle the knots in his chest, with no map and no language. What if we gave boys something else? A different blueprint, not of power, but of presence, of openness, of community. What if as grown men, we gave that to ourselves? Maybe we can't rewrite our entire past, but we can draw a new line forward. We can start by checking in on our friends, by asking better questions, by holding space before offering solutions, by saying I love you and meaning it, by creating spaces where masculinity isn't a mask but a mosaic, layered, soft, resilient, real. So let's not just rip up the rule book. Let's write a better one. One where men are allowed to be full humans. One where boyhood becomes a beginning, not a blueprint of oppression. Because being a man shouldn't mean burying your softness. It should mean being brave enough to share it. This has been Wednesdays with Woody, and if you're out there navigating your boy problems, know this, you're not alone. Till next week, stay soft, stay loud, stay human. Love and light. Ciao.